Welcome to MasterMined, the behavioral health business podcast. We go beyond the clinical to explore what it really takes to build, grow, and lead a successful behavioral health organization. Each episode features candid, practical conversations with industry leaders, offering strategies to scale your business while staying true to your mission. From branding and marketing to leadership, culture, and compliance, we cover the tools you need to balance care and commerce with confidence. MasterMined is brought to you by Snapshot, a digital agency on a mission to serve with heart, execute with excellence, and build something bigger together. And now, welcome to MasterMined.
Digital ads and SEO get a lot of attention, and rightfully so. But if you're ignoring social, especially in behavioral health, you're leaving opportunity on the table. The game has changed. Static posts don't cut it anymore. Video content is leading the way, and the brands that win are the ones that show up with consistency, clarity, and authenticity. We get asked all the time, should I be on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn? What about Snapchat or X? And more importantly, why bother with organic at all? Today, we're breaking down what's actually working on social, which platforms make sense for which audiences, and how you can start building real trust before a single call ever comes in. Lee, Jeff, thanks for joining the show again today. Looking forward to this episode. Maybe we'll just go ahead and get it kicked off. What do you see as being one of the biggest mistakes that centers make today on organic social?
Jeff, before you answer that, I wanted to say, Mark, it's so funny when you were naming off all the channels, and I'm like, most people are probably thinking, what are these 50-plus-year-old guys going to do talking about TikTok and Snapchat?
That's a good point. They didn't even have social media when we started
well, heck,
our careers.
I mean, when we graduated college, I always tell people, the internet wasn't around. Because they'll always say, well, aren't you guys like the internet guys? Well, yeah, but you do know before that, there was time before the internet.
There was marketing before the internet.
Well, and it's funny, I want to kick this over to Jeff, but your question, Mark, it all gets down to, what are your KPIs around social?
Yeah.
Because I love social, but I love the KPIs more. And so we just need to make sure it's all connected. But anyway, I'll let you go ahead and answer Mark's question first.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
No,
what's the biggest mistake?
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, so I think social media has the potential to make people feel good about the wrong things. Mm-hmm. That's what I think. Is
Jeff? That's perfect.
Wow. I mean, it just, to me, that's the issue. Is that you can feel like you got it going on because all of a sudden it's like you get the dopamine hit based on a post or something like that. But is it really moving the needle? You need to establish what needle you want to move. To Lee's point, and this is going to be a very general statement, but I'm going to put it out there because it's not true in every instance. But I like to think about social media as kind of a best supporting actor. As opposed to like a leading character, I like to think of it as sort of a supporting actor. And then like what role does it do in terms of character development for your overall program? So that's the way I like to try to frame it. Guys, how does that land?
I think that's a very good analogy, Jeff, because I like to look at social as being, it's an important part of what we're doing in the web presence for treatment centers, but it's not the primary conversion piece. It's a supporting actor, actress, like you said. I think that I love to get back to the KPIs because there are, you're going to have KPIs around leads, assessments as an example, and admissions. That's an important piece. But there's also going to be some KPIs where social media can be important, right, in driving some of those other types of connections. And if you don't understand it, it's easy to say, well, you know what? Instagram's not converting, so I'm just not going to do it. Well, it might be supporting some other elements of your business that are important. And then I think when you said, Jeff, what was your quote where you just said, we focus on the wrong things?
It can make you feel really good about the wrong things.
Yes, that's a constant piece that comes up when I'm on calls because they'll talk about, well, I've launched this podcast or I've launched this video series and I've got all these likes. And when we start digging into it, I'm like, well, have you looked at your subscriber count? Like, are those real subscribers? And why is it that you've got, 40,000 views, but one comment?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden it's like the vanity metrics take over.
Right.
And I've had calls where they'll defend. It's like, well, and I'm like, well, but is it actually driving, phone calls or leads? I mean, you have to ask yourself that.
So Lee, are you really saying that there are people out there with fake profiles?
Oh my goodness. That's funny.
Or buying followers? Does that happen?
Oh.
Yeah, come on.
Oh, say it isn't so.
Say it isn't so.
Yeah.
You do bring up okay, we're going to get into the fake followers and all that sort of stuff, but I do want to bring up something that here's where it makes it cloudy because we could otherwise make this a very short episode. Mm-hmm. But I think where it gets really cloudy is the fact that all of these supporting characters, the supporting actors that we're talking about, all of these various platforms, they are signals to the larger algorithm. And so it's like we do need to recognize that the vertical that we're in terms of digital marketing, and what establishes authority and what establishes your organic ranking and shows that you're important versus not important. All of these things are various signals, whether we like them or not. And so for example, especially when it comes to some of the new AI algorithms, they are looking for things like Yelp. They are looking for things, like how active are you in social media and how much engagement do you have in social media? And while those individual posts may or may not be generating the right kind of traffic for you, they do send authority signals to the larger algorithm. That's why you can't ignore this space. Because, I mean, again, we have some visibility in terms of the way those algorithms are being developed, but one thing that we know for sure is that the more active you are and the more consistent you are in certain content verticals, the higher up you're going to show up in various search, and then for these AI generated, what am I trying to say here?
AI generated content?
No, it's the AI overview.
Oh, okay.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
We can get that out in editing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's like the overview is just going to give a snapshot, but there's so many signals that go into the creation of that overview.
And I think that part of where I see centers fall or make that misconnection is that you have to account for it. I'm not saying you don't account. I'm saying you do need to account for it. It's just that the spin you put to that and the way you account for it might not be on well, why didn't I get an admit from Facebook last month?
Right.
It might be that your Facebook engagement is feeding into your SEO strategy,
Correct.
right? Or in the way I like to practice is for force multiplication, you're already doing something like we were on television yesterday down in Tampa for one of my clients. Well, we have a reason why we're doing that for community and for professional positioning, but then we take that video and then we all of a sudden create the reels that go on Instagram and go on TikTok. And it's not completely free, but it's really cheap. And all of a sudden I'm accounting for it in multiple ways, so it wasn't just like a big expense, And so, and everybody understands what its contribution is to the entire marketing strategy. I think that's critical. And you have to be careful that you all of a sudden don't get into that situation of, well, I didn't get that Facebook admit last month, so I need to cut Facebook, or I need to cut Instagram, or I need to cut LinkedIn, because there are important signals, like Jeff alluded to, that make it a reason why you want to do that.
Yeah, and I think very good point on it being a part of your overall strategy. Like I think you can't look at social media as in a silo and just, a lot of times we have clients that expect, hey, if we're going to do the social media, we're going to get more admits based on it. And, I would just say the consistency and the authenticity, creates that trust and makes people listen. And I think that's what we've seen in another industry, and I'm going to ask this question next about volume, like frequency on social. But we had a marketing person that came to us in another industry and said, hey, I think we're posting way too much. I think like we need to cut it down. And I think we were posting maybe 4 to 5 times a week on it. And so anyway, that happened one day, and we're talking to him, we're reworking the strategy. The very next day, the CEO called me and said, hey man, I just want to tell you that we just hired a vice president of a region for our company, and they said that they've watched our social media for like months now, and they just see how engaged we are in the community, and they knew that we were a place they wanted to work for. And social just speaks to so many people. We've talked about the alumni networks on past episodes, and it's like, whether it is getting alumni engaged in what we're doing on a day-to-day in these centers, or, it's the alumni just happen to have a friend that needs help at that moment, and they see a social media post, and they don't come through a traditional channel of they clicked on a link or they called the right call metrics number, but they just got referred in.
Mark, there's a project that your company is supporting one of my clients, and it's that kind of strategy that's been so important for them, because it's easier for the staff to create the social post and then tag the company, the business, than it is for us to ask that staff, can you write an SEO article this month? Like it's much quicker, and now we're connecting their audience, and especially when you're talking about clinicians and therapists, their professional audience, to the company, and everybody feels better about it. And you've given your staff and then alumni. Now you're giving your alumni a way that they can participate, which helps your overall marketing strategy versus having to have, I'm going to have to hire another web developer to do this. Well, no, you've got this great platform in social media. It's just a question of making sure that you're identifying the KPIs and funding it appropriately.
Right. You're going to do different things for different reasons. And I mean, just to bounce off of what you just said, listen, employee recruitment is tough in this industry. We know, right? And so to your point, yes, sometimes your organic social media strategy may be solely to say we're a great employer. It may be to attract quality candidates that want to work for your organization. That's not going to ring your admissions line. Okay, but it's like you have to take a look at your overall organization and just say, wow, we have X% turnover within certain positions, and we're not getting the kind of applicants that we want for it, or whatever. I mean, we recognize that that's a challenge. Well, then part of your social strategy is going to be, addressing what those weak spots are, so that people can say, wow, they're super engaged in the community, and then they really say what I believe, and that's an organization that I can get behind. There's value in that, because there's a real cost in turnover, and there's a real cost in employee recruitment.
Starbucks, I write about this in my book, Starbucks does an amazing example, and they actually have guidelines and policies. They want their baristas sharing and promoting on social.
Yep.
And that's the thing, it can be done within good compliance. You can set up your boundaries, and that's totally fine, for every company to set it up. But my goodness, most staff, we're so interconnected with our professional lives, it's sometimes hard to separate. And it's not for everybody, but for, certainly people like me and Jeff, we just did a selfie here. That's just part of my nature, that I want to share, with my community, my groups of family and friends and followers. And there's a lot of your staff that will want to do that. And that's another critical piece to employee retention, right? In addition to recruitment. And it gets back to something we talked about in a previous episode. Is it attraction or is it promotion?
Right.
And this is a great attraction opportunity.
Yeah. Perfect example of, Lee has mentioned, like what Starbucks does, for example, the people who do social media well, it feels like them.
Yeah.
It feels organic. It's like you could walk into a Starbucks and you're going to see that person, as opposed to a stock image or a stock video. It's like if it is too slick, it's not going to resonate.
Yeah.
And then here's the example without naming names, but Mark, your team, in this example, you guys are creating a couple of really quality posts a week, and you bring in your graphic designer, you've got Wendy Lee in content, and it's really nice, very well thought out pieces. So now that's posted, but then you've got staff, alumni, consultants, we're also sharing our own stuff, and then we're also resharing the professionally produced stuff, and it creates this multiplied effect. Instead of just waiting for the one person to do the one post, now all of a sudden you've got this community, and we can take advantage of the professional stuff, but then we're also like, wow, they're making it easy for me. So now today I can just post a selfie, or I can just post this, instead of it just falling on the internal staff to do everything. There's got to be that partnership.
Well, and Mark, to go back to your original question about frequency and things like that, it really depends. It really depends upon what you're trying to accomplish. So one thing that you will be rewarded in the algorithm. If you start posting on a daily basis, my recommendation, and I think anybody will agree with this, is you need to maintain that. Because if you don't maintain that, all of a sudden, it's like you're gonna drop. So if it's important to you that you post daily, then I'm gonna recommend that you go ahead and pre-schedule stuff way out in the future. Now, I personally think that that's too much, but for some organizations and for some people, that's their strategy. So consistency is more important than cadence. So if you want to establish a weekly posting schedule where we're posting once a week, great. I think that's wonderful. Make sure you're posting every week, and make sure that it's something you're posting that adds value. And it's not just, to Lee's point, hey, look at me, sort of promotion. It's going to be something that people have some interest in.
And then here's where what I try to take some of the pressure off my clients is that there is the creating of the content that's going to go on your social platforms. So there's one piece. But then there is the resharing or the reposting. That's number 2. And then number 3 is, are you getting your staff, your community, your alumni, are they commenting? That would be the third tier. Yep. And then the 4th tier is, are you liking or subscribing? And if you can get your team to kind of think that way, I think it takes a lot of the pressure off. Some people are going to create. Some people are going to reshare, repost. Some people are only going to be good at commenting, and some people are only going to be able to hit like. And you know what? It's all okay. Not everybody has to do everything, because I'm a big believer that everybody doesn't have to do everything. Yeah. So you want to create that, and you want to explain it to your teams so that they can feel good about, wow, I really am helping. And you want to share that with your alumni too, because everybody's kind of got a different personality trait.
Right. And then, for example, to your point, when you get to that 4th tier of engagement, who are you following? It's like, who are you resharing? And then that again sends a signal to the algorithm that says, this is what our larger ecosystem looks like.
Jeff, that's a good point. I had a customer a long time ago. They were saying, oh, I got my team, they're doing all this social media. And then when I went to go meet with one of their therapists, and we were just having kind of a one-on-one, I was kind of helping them kind of with their personal brand. And he was showing me, okay, his LinkedIn profile, he had like 50 connections. So we had this idea that maybe he had this huge, but he wasn't really checking LinkedIn, and his profile even had his previous company.
wow.
And so that's where sometimes it's a disconnect. So we need to we need to make it a very open, friendly, non-judgmental space, like we treat our patients and callers. And the same thing with our staff. We need to make it easy on them, and let's go in and help so that they actually can feel good about building their online audience.
Yeah, that creates engagement internally. I mean, it's so affordable these days to create really quality content, like you mentioned, being on the news, and there's so many AI tools today that you could take that news clip and you could cut up 10 social media posts that and for one way or another, like, it will pull out the very best talking points that you had on that show, and now you've got 10 pieces of content to put out there to drive engagement within what you're doing.
Mark, I mean, you hit on a point. We use a tool called Opus Clip, which it's a free plug for them. I mean, I like it personally, and a lot of my clients use it. But that's the thing when people ask me about, well, why are you going on television? Yeah. I'm going on TV because we're getting amazing 4K video in studio. You can't produce it for the cost, right? To do that,
100%.
And the thing is, I don't know. I can't remember what the Tampa market was for their 9 a.m. It's like a Today Show, they're NBC. I want to say they were telling me it was maybe 30 or 40,000 people might be watching it at that moment. That's not of interest to me.
Right.
What's of interest to me is all the clips, the video that I'm going to get, that I'm going to be able to cut up. And I'm not worried about that 30 or 40,000. We're going to be able to put that out and really dwarf that on potentially impressions, right, on all the different channels.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to social media, Lee, you're so spot on, because it is. People need to realize that it is not necessarily the event; it's what you do after the event.
Yes.
It's what you do to actually, chop up, reshare, and then, force multiply what you just did. So that's the thing that I would say to people is like, yeah, I agree. It's like television is not the medium that it used to be, but it still carries major credibility when you can put that logo on your website, and then you can also use that 4K video from a professional studio and then chop that up, and then it just screams credibility. Whether those 30, 40,000 people, engage with you or not. Great if they did, but that's really not the point.
Jeff, let me ask you a technical question. So I grew up, I think, obviously in a time before the internet, and we used to call the little logo, the little bug, Chiron.
Yeah.
But nobody knows that term anymore. And so I was like, oh, what Chiron's going to be? And they're like, what's a Chiron? And it's like, now we call it, we don't even call it bug. And then it used to be called bug. Now it's the logo in the corner.
Yeah.
Am I just getting old?
Or watermark. Well, or watermark. Or watermark. I mean, and so it's like, when I came up, the Chiron was the lower third.
Gotcha.
Right? And it's like, and so a lot of people refer to that now as the lower third.
You're not getting old. You're getting wise, right? You and Jeff both. But hey, just talking about like the content creation. So we started as a video production company, and we used to go set up on location. We'd capture 10 clips, 10 different 1-minute videos of executives talking about their programs, whatever it might be. And then we would come back and we would charge them, thousands of dollars to edit those up into the 10 clips. And like today, and I hate to take this away from us, but it's just the evolution of where the world's going. It's like, man, you could actually create quality content with an iPhone, just an iPhone and a stand, as long as you have, what we always recommend when we're working with clients on setting it up on your own is quality lighting and quality audio. Those two things, if you get that, and you have an area set up where, maybe it's not always the executives, maybe it's some of the team members within the centers, that can go in and just talk about their subject matter expertise. It's that's the engaging content that people want to see. Or I went to a conference and I captured some video footage on my iPhone, had good quality video or audio and the video, and now I go cut that up 10 different ways, and now I've got a ton of content. There's no lack of content. I know we've a lot of times we have clients that go, I don't even know where to start. I don't know where to start with the graphics, with the, all the, the post and the writing and all of that. And it's just so easy today to really create a lot of robust content. But we talked about frequency. And, I know it all depends upon the KPIs that we're trying to accomplish. But is there just one best practice that you go?
Well, what I was going to say, Mark, is it's okay for the treatment center owners to ask for documentation on this. So they should be informed about what is the frequency that they're going after, and it should be documented the style of content they're producing. So are they going to be sharing about an event? There's probably multiple events a month that are going on. Are they going to share a quote from a staff member? So pulling a pull quote is a fabulous, idea. I know one of my clients, out in Burns, a Discovery Place, some of their founders, the stuff that comes out of their mouth is rich. And I'm like, that's your social media, because everybody has heard them say that. And you don't have to think about trying to create something brand new. Like it's right there. Like you already have it in you. And a lot of programs don't realize they've done the hard work. It's just a question of actually just taking a few minutes to formalize, here's our strategy, and then so now you've got everything that's potentially, and then you throw it into, like Jeff was saying, just a schedule so that it's consistent. And it might be, like you said, it might be once a week, it might be a couple times a month. That's okay. But be consistent and hold the team accountable for producing that.
And I think it's important to also say, here's what we're trying to accomplish, and then go back and actually measure, were we successful. The other thing that I want to point out, and Mark, you make a really good point about how easy it is to create these things. I think the thing that we need to remember, though, is that the algorithm actually reads more than your consumer does. It's like we're in a time in society where, I hate to admit it because I'm a reader. It's like I love books, I love long form articles. I mean, it's like I'm really big at reading, but I've got to recognize that I'm like the minority. It's like, I mean, I read, I'm not afraid to read a 10,000 word article and really get something from it. But the reality of it is your customer is not going to do that. So it's like you need to be thinking about video, you need to be thinking about audio, you need to be thinking about the way your content is going to be consumed. So that's not to say that you don't do written content, but I think we need to be realistic and say the end consumer may not read that. The person that's going to read that is probably going to be Google when it's indexing what you're doing on social media.
Yeah, I would
agree.
Yeah, I would freak out, and I would not consume 10,000 words of content. I want the quick hit. So, I mean, you're right. It speaks to every audience.
However, I say a 10,000 word article, it's got to be something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
And it's got to be something where I really want to go deep.
Well, and Jeff, I want to add on, because some people are going to say, well, how do small programs compete? And I think that it's the consistency, and Google has gone hyper local. So they are not just returning results just for the big players, right? You're not just searching, as an example, rehab-related keywords and only getting the Foundation's, Recovery Network, or the Odysseys, or the Promises. You're getting also real hyper-local, and that's where you can compete, but only if you're being very consistent and broad. It doesn't mean you have to do as many posts as much as some of the big players, but that you are being consistent, because Google wants to reward, the serious, consistent players.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Lee, because I can think about a client that I was working with recently who dominated organic search for a specific search term, right? And it's like they dominated, so they were so used to, there was top of page, and then next thing you know is like one day they were in a meeting and they were like, we're really proud of our SEO, and let me show you. And they pulled up that search term, they weren't on the front page anymore. Do you know what it was? It was a small, tiny little counselor who had created a podcast, who had done some interviews on that search term, and completely moved them off the front page. And so it's like they didn't have the size, they didn't have the scale, but they did have the highly relevant, hyper local content for that SEO term. And it's like that's what's happening in the world now.
Well, and that's why a lot of times I'll get calls about what are we going to do with all these directory portals, and listen, they were a problem back 15 years ago when we were combating them, and I think that Google really has help with that, because it has gone hyper-local. Yeah, they're still there, but they don't show up as much as you would think because of the hyper. But only if you are paying attention to all your different channels and being consistent.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've talked about authentic content. We've talked about creating trust in this space. Using the social. How do we do all that without crossing any HIPAA boundaries in this space? Is there things that you guys maybe you talk to your clients about?
Well, I think you have to work with experienced partners to make sure that you're getting some good advice, because not every size organization is going to have a compliance officer. Right. We were very fortunate at where I've worked that we had full-time compliance officer. Not everybody's going to have that, but there are best practices to keep you safe, and you can ask questions. That's what I love about working in behavioral health, is that for the most part, the people I work with, we don't view each other as competitors, because there are 20-something million people that need help. We all can't service 20 million, right? So it's all about helping each other in the service of our fellow person, and that's where I think you can network within the different professional organizations. You can network at the conferences. You can call other centers even down the street, and they're going to be real open and share with you. And I think that's a good place to start. You shouldn't let that worry stop you from moving forward. Right. Maybe you go a little slower, but document, understand, what your impact is going to be, and so that everybody knows. Here's how we're going to operate. For each of my clients, I've created, it was from my foundation's days, a marketing code of ethics, and it's not that hard for each center to write down what your code of ethics or what your compliance approach is going to be.
Yeah, I think if we're looking for sort of a rubric to kind of put people in the right direction, one way of thinking about it is just ask, is this message focused upon attracting new people to my program, and it's more of a marketing effort? Those people are not in your care. So it's like on the front end of admission, in general, there are some HIPAA sort of considerations, but in general, you're pretty safe, kind of blue ocean there. Once they've engaged with you, they've spoken to an admissions person, it starts to get a little bit more cloudy. And then certainly once they go in program and then once they leave your program, you're in much murkier territory in terms of what you do in terms of handling HIPAA compliance. So yes, get some expert advice around that. But I mean, for the most part, if you're talking about your program and you're attracting people from a marketing perspective, HIPAA is a concern, but it's not something that should really slow you down.
Yeah. Well, Lee, you've talked about a really powerful 360 concept of using your content across. Can you kind of walk the audience through like just how you look at it from scaling it across the multiple platforms to create engagement?
Well, I mean, to break it down in short, in my book, I've got a chapter on force multiplication. That's the military term that I've applied to this strategy. And for most centers, when they want to start expanding into other channels like social, they struggle with how am I going to pay for this? And that's where the force multiplication strategy, I think, can really help centers grow into what the opportunity could be. So the example is we all start with writing content for a blog generally. So if we're going to write that content for your blog post, you need to make sure that you're quoting staff. So now you're bringing staff into that article, right? And then when you're writing that article and talking to your staff for the article, why not record that as a video? And then you also can take that video and you can put it out as an audio podcast. And then while you're doing that, you're also going to take some still images. So now you've got some social opportunity there. And now all of a sudden you've taken something where if you went individually and tried to create these things, it would have cost you thousands of dollars and probably tens, if not 100 hours to complete. You've been able to do it in a much more shortened window, right? And now you multiply that across the many different platforms. And that's the way you start to dip your toe into different channels and understand then. The key is you got to have the KPIs. Like you have to understand, is this working? But that's how when people say, well, how did you grow Foundations? Well, we didn't always have 30 people working in digital marketing at Foundations. There was a time when it was me, Sherry Carter, and Sean Manis. And that was it. And people forget those times. And then we started adding on. That's how I first got connected with Jeff in behavioral health space. I had known Jeff in digital marketing, digital music, but all of a sudden we needed PR. And I reached out to Jeff. And all of a sudden, you know what? We need our own in-house videographer. So we went and found Caleb McLaughlin. And then by the time we exited, we had 3 videographers. But we didn't do that at first. And so I always give people that encouragement that you can do this and you can do it in the right way. You just want to make sure you're tracking your data and you're growing into it. Don't feel like you have to start so big.
Yeah. Well, we're on a podcast. Podcasts we think are very important to creating trust and whatnot. We've got a lot of clients that are launching podcasts in the behavioral health space. We've worked with a lot of people in that area. Like, what do you like when you work with a center? Like, what do you advise when they're creating podcast content or they're thinking about launching a podcast? Like, what's some things that you may guide them on?
I'm going to go back to what are you capable of supporting? And so, I mean, I'll go to bounce off of Lee's point in terms of what the term force multiplication. I mean, another way of thinking about that are, basically it's like think Depression era. It's like we're not going to let anything go to waste, right? We're going to use absolutely everything. And so from that standpoint, you want to make sure that, if you do something, it's like, am I squeezing all the juice out of what I've just done? And so, I mean, to Lee's point, I'm 1,000% in agreement with that. Mark, to your point, the challenge that most people have with any sort of marketing effort that they try to do internally is seems like a great idea. There's initial enthusiasm for it. And it's like, I don't know what the statistic is, but when it comes to podcasts, I mean, most podcasts end after 3 episodes because they're not easy to do. Especially they're not easy to do at a high level. And I think most people underestimate the effort that goes into it. And then also it's like if you're going to go to the trouble to attract an audience, you want to be able to give them a consistent schedule of content. And it's like, and you want to have multiple weeks and multiple episodes available for them to go. And so most podcasts, what they'll do is they'll get super excited. They'll go ahead and push an episode out there, and then a month will go by before they push out another episode. And then inertia just peters out. So before you start any sort of an initiative like that, what can you internally support and what are you trying to accomplish?
Yeah.
And I wanted to play off that too, Jeff, like as an example, all digital marketing, it can be a lead generating source, but it can also be a supporting element for other channels.
Or other initiatives.
Yeah,
right?
other initiatives. Right. So one of the examples I was really proud of, I was at Specialty Care, which is here in Nashville. After I left Foundations, I went to Specialty Care, and they provide hospital operating room support, so like perfusion and IOM. And so they really, most patients aren't selecting their perfusionist. They don't get online and say, "Oh, who's my perfusionist?" Like, it kind of comes with your surgeon. So the opportunity was not so much in trying to run digital ads and promote digital marketing kind of in the way that we had maybe done in behavioral health. So, but the podcast was an amazing tool for us because we created the podcast to support business development.
Right.
Then it also supported retention and recruiting. So you have to make sure that you understand like what the purpose is, and those are the teams that paid for it. Because sometimes some of your digital marketing asset creation is not going to go back to your digital marketing cost per admit. Some of it may need to go to alumni. Some of it may need to go to HR recruiting. Some of it may go to business development. And when you start to understand it, all of a sudden that makes it much more affordable and appropriate in the way that you budget those costs. Because if you just came to me and said, "Lee, I want to create a podcast for digital marketing for behavioral health," I would be like, "Okay, I love the idea, but I don't know if that's going to work on our cost per admit KPI." But you're going to get these other benefits that we're going to track.
Right.
And that's where some of that cost should go. And all of a sudden that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's like it's got to financially make sense in terms of what you're doing. And so to Lee's point, you need to have enough sophistication and a dialogue with the financial team so they understand how we're going to allocate the spend and then how we're going to measure the efficacy of that spend, because it's not necessarily all about lead generation. And if that's the ultimate goal, then a podcast is not necessarily going to be for lead generation, right? But it can be highly effective for any number of other efforts.
Yeah.
I have a quote in this book. I share this story from Nick Hayes at Cumberland Heights. So when I first got there helping them out, that was one of the first things that I identified. I said, "I don't know why y'all are not doing a podcast. I mean, you're the oldest treatment program in Tennessee. You've treated, over 10,000 patients, in the lifetime of Cumberland Heights." I said, "You've got access to all these amazing people." So they created a podcast, but and I share that Nick came to me during one of their fundraisers at Ryman, and he goes, "Lee, I just met a lady at this event, and she's here because her son got sober at Cumberland Heights, and they heard my first interview that I did on the podcast." So you're going to get those, but guess what? One doesn't pay for the whole.
Yeah.
Well,
and so that's where you have to understand.
Let's pull it back to the supporting actor.
Yes.
Right. So it's like, was the purpose of that podcast to generate that lead? No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
But what it did was support and then create a story and then support the overall brand initiative.
Yeah. Well, and then it helps out a lot of ways. It helps out on the fundraising, right, which is critical to them as a nonprofit. And then it supports the alumni, it supports the business development, it supports them recruiting. And that's where when you start to think about it that way, that force multiplied way, it's like, wow, that makes good business sense, because your finance team is going to love that versus just saying, "Well, I've got this, $2,000 whatever it costs to produce the podcast at that time. I'm only getting one admit from that." No, you're getting so much more, and you can multiply it. And I find that most agencies, they love when the treatment center is providing them some rich content like that, because now they've got some assets that they can go and chop up and spread around different ways.
Yeah. And Jeff, I think you're, all great points. I think you're cutting the podcast folks short on 3 episodes. The latest stat I saw is most podcasts that are launched do not make it past 12 episodes. 12. Okay. So, but still, like, you put some energy into it and you find out, like, man, I've got to stay with this. I got to be consistent. Just like anything you do in marketing, is the only way it's going to be successful is to create that consistency, is what we've seen. But
and we get back to, what's the point?
Yeah.
Are you trying to reach the one person, or are you just trying to reach a big vanity metric?
Yeah.
Because I don't really fall for the vanity metrics. Like, if somebody was to say, "Well, I've got like the example I used, earlier, maybe on a previous episode, 40,000, views on this YouTube podcast video, but I had 1 comment." Okay, I kind of think that's probably not real. But I would much rather have where there was a podcast where we had interviewed Peter Levine, and all of a sudden you see like hundreds of comments. He didn't have 40,000 views, but we had 100. I mean, that's real people, and they're engaged and they're commenting and they're liking. Like, that's how you really start to judge it. So I'd much rather have 100 views and a handful of likes and a handful of comments than 40,000 views and 1 comment.
Yeah. Well, that's a great point, Lee. And as we wrap this up, like, let me just ask you both, like, has there been a campaign or a post that you've seen, like, recently that you go, man, these folks really get it? Is there something that stands out to either one of you?
Well, not in this space, but General Electric, they did one that called "We Create the Future," and it was all about trying to do recruiting, and I think that was a really good one. I think you can, again, if you'll go and study some other industries, it's really fascinating. Like we mentioned Starbucks, that's a good one you can look at. I think some of the automotive brands have some interesting ones. I mean, listen, you don't always have to recreate the wheel, right? You can get some inspiration and go, "Oh, how can I apply this into what I'm doing?"
Yeah, I'm a fan of Southwest Airlines, and if you take a look at what they do from a marketing perspective in terms of integration for what they do social media wise, what they do with their email campaigns, it's like I'm a big fan of what they do, and I think we can learn a lot from other industries. And then take a look at some consumer brands that do this really well. I mean, like OnCloud, for example, I think does an amazing job with some of their social media and some of their engagement. Again, they're going for more of a direct to consumer audience, and that's fine. But it's like even if we just learn from what other brands are doing, Chipotle does a good job. I mean, it's like we can continue to talk about what other brands do, and I think in the space that we're currently serving, I think there's more that we can do. But I will say that it's like I don't know that there's necessarily the upside for investing that much more in the kinds of campaigns that we're talking about. It depends upon what you're trying to to accomplish. But it's like, I mean, what Chipotle does, it's like, listen, that's probably not going to work for most programs, right? And so again, I just go back to supporting actor.
Yeah, I think looking at other industries, seeing like what they're doing and what's working, and I like to call it R&D, rip off and duplicate. Now, I wouldn't do that necessarily in the same industry. You don't want to rip off what other people are doing and look like hey, I'm just a copycat. But what's working in other industries. And
I think there's also this point of allies. I think establishing your allies in your community, and I think that there's certain treatment programs that you're going to be allied with that you can work together, and so you can actually get some force multiplication in that regard too. Because if you've got some other treatment centers that you're already probably co-opted with in a sense, that you do conferences together or you do training together, well, they would probably also join together with social media back and forth, which helps take some of the burden off the lift.
Mm-hmm. Great insights today. You guys really brought it. I just want to, say that's it for today's episode of MasterMined. Big thanks to Jeff and Lee for co-hosting and bringing the fire, as always. Appreciate you guys for sharing what's really working out there. If you're interested in a social audit, we'll drop all of our information in the show notes, and we're happy to work with you on just looking at your social and putting together a strategy for you. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you the next time on MasterMined.
That wraps up this episode of MasterMined. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, MasterMined is not just a podcast, it's a community. So don't forget to comment, subscribe, and review us. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content that's relevant and relatable. Thanks again to our sponsor, Snapshot, a digital media marketing agency. And thank you for joining us on MasterMined, your behavioral health playbook.